What up everybody, it's iPadBeatmaking.com here today. Gonna go over a few questions that I've gotten since posting my last beat video using Beatmaker 3 but using Sitala for the drums instead of Beatmaker 3's internal browsing system and pads. So I thought it'd be a good video to tell y'all why and how I've set all of this up. So let's talk about the positives and the negatives of using Sitala with Beatmaker 3. First of all, Beatmaker 3's file system is a nightmare to keep synced up between multiple iPads, and most Beatmaker 3 veterans know never to hit that rescan or reset button within the Beatmaker 3 settings menu. It just can lead to a nightmare. You can end up losing the entire way that your Beatmaker 3 operation is going with the file system. So usually those of us who use it a lot would rather just leave it alone. Once it's set up the way that we like, we don't really want to go rescanning anything after the fact. Sometimes it just doesn't result in favorable outcomes. The Beatmaker 3 internal file system is starting to show its age. Its file system isn't scrollable with a magic keyboard case, a bridge case, etc. And this may or may not be a big deal for you, but I find that it's just a little quirk that's a little annoying. It makes me not want to really fill up the file system as full as I would. Even though I've got a really substantial file count in the file system, I still don't feel motivated to go through it because it's just not scrollable. So a lot of clicking and dragging and that kind of stuff, and it's just not, when I'm in the flow, I don't really enjoy that. And another pro for Sitala here is that there's a few free and paid desktop apps to make Sitala kits, so you don't have to rely on just drag and drop or just the folder root system within Sitala in order to build out your kits. You can use a dedicated app on desktop to go ahead and build Sitala kits, which is really cool. Sitala also has a desktop app, so when you make your kits for Sitala on iOS, you're also making them for Sitala on desktop as well, which is really handy to have. Another benefit to this is since Sitala is an AUV3, you're able to take your samples with you to every single DAW. And this is a pretty big deal if you might want to use Beatmaker 3 today, maybe use AUM tomorrow, multi-track studio the next day, Cubasis the next day. You always have a very consistent and reliable container for your samples, so that way you're not stuck using the native format for Beatmaker 3 kits, Cubasis kits, so on and so forth, which can result in a lot of bloat on your iOS file system. Let's say you've only got 64, 128 gigabytes of space. You really don't need to be taking 10 gigs of drums and building kits for Beatmaker 3's custom interface and format and Cubasis and so on and so forth. It just can get really redundant at times. So this will allow you to not have to deal with that. And Sitala also has iCloud support, and this is great because you might want to access all of your sound kits whenever, wherever, but you don't necessarily want them taking up all that space on your device or devices all of the time. And being able to have your kits hosted in iCloud but ready to be pulled down at any time is a great way to balance out having when you need it without weighing down your device's storage. So that is another wonderful perk of using Sitala as the main host for Beatmaker 3. And Sitala has a really cool pad sound swapping feature, and it's currently unparalleled, but I'm gonna go ahead and put an asterisk here because when we're porting Maschine or Ableton kits over, you're probably gonna lose that feature. Also, when using the pad swapping, you're required to manually map and grant access to the folders, and the mapping doesn't travel well in between iPads. So say you've mapped out all the folders and everything perfectly on one iPad, but you're like, let me go ahead and send this to an iPhone or another iPad. You now need to re-grant access to all of the subfolders therein. You can't just grant access one time to the main folder of the kit and it just unlocks it for all of them. You got to go pad by pad and manually unlock it, and that can be a little tedious. So there's a few things to note there. I enjoy the pad swapping feature, but it isn't the primary reason that I'm currently using Sitala. And again, I forfeited this with Maschine converted kits because we're not getting the subfolder root structure of all the samples. We're just getting the completed kits with the samples contained therein. Now let's talk about some of the cons of this workflow, because like with anything, we're gonna have to forfeit something if we're gonna go ahead and not use Beatmaker 3 internally and are instead gonna let Sitala handle that operation. We are going to lose the Beatmaker 3 search system for our WAV files. Now, depending on how you do this, you will be able to still search within your file system for iOS in general with Sitala and drag and drop things in, but that's going to take a couple of apps at once to kind of make that happen. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but some people really like Beatmaker 3's file system for its searchability and its tagging. You can still tag things on the iOS file system, but again, it's just, you know, it's a little longer a path for some people versus just having everything natively there inside of Beatmaker 3. And this is a big one for some people. You lose the chromatic pad playability. And this is huge for people who like to be able to have a hi-hat, pitch it up or down, have an 808 natively on the pad, be able to have it tuned to C3 or whatever, and then play that with the pads. You will lose that ability with this feature. So I still recommend either putting your 808s in a container such as Dramble, where it allows you to play them chromatically, or bringing those 808s directly onto the pads into Beatmaker 3's file system so that you can play it chromatically as you go. Now I kind of look at these like outlier cases. I'm not looking to chromatically play a snare or a clap every single song, so the 808s I think is very valid. Hi-hats can sometimes be valid based on how you're producing, but again, you could initiate another Sitala instance or copy that same hi-hat to another pad, pitch it down and play it that way. But again, that's going to be just two variations of the hi-hat. It's not going to have the stair stepping in the piano roll like a lot of trap producers would like. So that is something to keep in mind. So there's a few sacrifices to be made, but I feel like the ability to take these kits everywhere with me, it's lightweight, it's able to be hosted in iCloud, and it just works. It works very well. And as a bonus for Beatmaker 3 users, I've built the coveted, preview kit feature into this workflow so that we can preview the sounds in our kits in real time. Now, this feature is usually limited to a desktop in applications such as Maschine or MPC2 or hardware such as the MPC. So this is a really cool feature to have with you on the go. And I think I've come up with a satisfactory workflow solution for that inside of Beatmaker 3. And for me, it's really sped up production because I spend less time guessing what's inside of these kits, and I spend more time picking the right kit for the sounds that I'm looking for. Now, in this example, I'm converting Maschine kits to the Sitala format. You may have splice kits or kits from other sources. If so, that'll work too, but feel free to skip steps in this video to accommodate your specific situation. So let's talk about what we'll need. We'll need Maschine kits or expansions. In this case, we'll be using Maschine expansions. They're clean, laid out predictably, and sound great. Again, you may or may not have or need these kits, but that's what I'm using for this video. Feel free to use whatever other kits that you have that you want to apply this workflow to. You don't need Maschine kits, but for this example, if you're going to follow it to the letter, you definitely will need the Maschine kits. Kitmaker, which you can find at kitmaker.gumroad.com. It's a $30 app, and this thing is incredible. It is really special for how you are able to quickly convert kits from Splice, Maschine, and wherever else into all of these different formats so that you can natively just grab them and go. SitalaImporter, which you can find at GitHub, and it is free, so be sure to grab SitalaImporter. The next thing that we may or may not need is Ableton. I've already got it, so I don't know if this is required for the step, but we will be bridging the formats in the Ableton .adg format. So if you find that you do end up needing it, just grab a free trial of it. And of course, I should have said this first, but I'll say it now. You're gonna need a desktop to accomplish this workflow. I think it's implied, but I just wanna make sure that is clear. In this case, I'm using a Mac. And finally, the tool that I'm not gonna say you need, but I do think you should have is SampleCrate on iOS. It's able to rename our files as we go, which I'll show you later in this video. And I think it's a really useful tool for previewing sounds as well and building out kits prior to sending them to any other app that supports drag and drop. I just think that SampleCrate is a really useful tool to have in your collection, so it's definitely worth grabbing, and you will see how I use it later on in this video. Now, with all that understood, let's get started. Now, first we're gonna bring our Maschine kits into KitMaker, and in this video, I'm just making one, but feel free to drag all of them in at once. As long as your computer can handle it, feel free to drag in all the kits or expansions that you want to at one time. And I'm gonna go into this assuming that you've already got KitMaker laid out the way you want, so I'm not gonna spend any time changing the configuration of the pads and all that kind of stuff. That is for a different video. If you need help with that, I recommend checking out the KitMaker YouTube channel. Now, within KitMaker, I'm selecting the MPC and Ableton export options. And the reason I added MPC to this is because it makes finding the Maschine kit preview files much easier. Now, if you know where they are natively, let me know in the comment section, but I didn't feel like digging for them, and I like how it just puts the preview files directly in the top folder of the MPC format. So that's how I'm using it for this. Of course, it takes up double the space when you're converting the kit, so if space is at a premium, maybe you want to skip this step. Now, once we're done with that on a Mac, the Ableton files are located in user folder, and that's whatever you call your computer or profile, music, Ableton, user library, presets, instruments, KitMaker kits. So I'll put that on the screen right now so that you can see exactly where it is. Now we're going to open up SitalaImporter and make sure embed samples and kit is checked. And I'm gonna put Sitala kits into a specific folder and make sure that I've titled the folder the same name as my Maschine expansion. This is really important to me to keep everything organized. Going forward through the file system later on, it's always gonna be clear what goes where. Just makes life easier when you just organize it properly from the beginning. I also like to put the expansion name under the vendor name for kits. In this case, it's Midnight Sunset, so I'm gonna type that in. And finally, I'm gonna drag the Ableton kits from this expansion into the SitalaImporter and hit convert. And after that's done, I'm gonna open up the KitMaker made MPC kit and go into its preview folder. I'm now going to copy those WAV files over, and if we've done this right, we should see the Sitala and WAV files with matching names. And once that's done, we'll send the folder to our iOS device. You can do AirDrop like I'm doing here, or you can put them onto an external hard drive, send them over, or you could drop them onto iCloud Drive or whatever other way that you see fit. Okay, now we're on the iPad and we've just AirDropped our files from the desktop. And we're gonna get them prepared to go into BeatMaker 3. So now I'm gonna open up BeatMaker 3, and now inside of BeatMaker 3, we're gonna get Sitala all set up. So the first thing we're gonna do is load a bank, go into plugins, AUV3, and we're gonna find Sitala on this list here. And it's gonna be under Decomposer, and we've got Sitala. And currently it's gonna naturally map to C3. So we're gonna go down a couple octaves to C1, which is the native mapping for Sitala. So it's gonna start at C1 and then end at D#2. So now that we've got that mapping done within Sitala, we're gonna go through and do a quick little step here. I like to go into settings and behaviors within that and do pad layer default trigger mode. Now for usual music production involving drums, you're going to want this to be on one shot, but for just this moment while we're bringing in our Sitala kits and preview files, we're going to change it to hold. This will save us hours if you're bringing in a lot of files with preview files and whatnot. This will save you hours switching this to hold versus doing it manually. So we're going to change that so that every audio file it brings in goes into hold. After you're done with this process, you're going to probably want to change it back to one shot. So that way, whenever you import a Beatmaker 3 sound, it imports as a one shot. But again, that's up to you overall, just letting you know. So now we've got that set up. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go on a SampleCrate. I like to use it in slide over mode. As you can see, we've got our preview files here, but because we converted them with KitMaker to the MPC format, they've got this .xpm at the end of it. So what I like to do is select all, and then hit this icon here. And this will allow us to do a renamer in batches. And we're going to grant access to the folder. And after we do that, we're going to have it find the .xpm and replace it with nothing. And then we're going to long press. And then after that, it should automatically remove the XPM, as you can see it has. And this is just something a little bit neater overall going into the Beatmaker 3 pad and file system. It just looks a little better to me. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we've got Sitala here mapped, everything works. What I like to do first and foremost is I like to make sure I've changed this kit to a kit within the Midnight Sunset, which is what we're doing in this case. One of those kits already pre-programmed, so I like to start with the first one. So as you can see, that's all set up. We're all good there. And the go ahead and bring this octave down to C1. And then we've got our first kit there, so we're good. So we've got that set up. Now we're going to go back to the pads, and we're going to take this off of keys mode here. Now we've got all of these pads here, and we can go on a 64, and we've got all these pads here. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is pull out our slide over mode, and we're just going to drag and drop these across all of the pads. All of the preview files. And as you can see, this process is quite tedious. So that's why I wanted to do the hold mode where it makes it on hold by default, because that's one less thing that we have to go in and change for all of these files. And what I'm doing right now might not make sense, but give it a moment and you will see why I'm laying it out this way. So yeah, I placed this in the wrong order, but it'll be all right. I just will put that there instead. And I could swap them later, but really not that serious. So okay, so we've got these all laid out now. And the reason I like them on hold is because you can, and then it immediately stops. If it's on one shot, it's going to play through the entire 4-bar, 8-bar sequence and trying to audition sounds. That's just crazy. Bam, simple like that. Now, if we want to go back into Sitala as usual, we select the pad, go keys, and then we put it back on 16. What I'm going to do though is a bonus step, and this is just how I like to lay my stuff out. If you don't want to because it's too tedious for you, that's fine. But this is how I like to roll. I color this red color here. So that way it kind of gives me an indication that it's not the kit itself, but is instead a preview file. And I've done it this way for all of the kits that I've brought over to Sitala, so it gives me a lot of continuity. Again, it's very tedious, not for everyone, I know, but Nonetheless, if you just want to take it to another level in terms of being able to readily identify what's what, you know, say you're performing or whatever, and you want to make sure you're not hitting these on accident, then yeah, I definitely think that's a useful method. Okay, now that we've got that done, we've got this thing all the way laid out properly. And what I like to do also before I save this is go back into the 16 pad layout and then go to the keys layout. And what this allows me to do is every time I load it, I've already got this ready to go with being playable. And then I've always got the option to see what else I want to see in terms of previewing different kits as I go. But just as soon as I initialize it, it's already ready to play, keep me in the zone, keep me inspired. And the way that we're going to save this is we're going to save the bank. I like to title it Sitala, and then I like to name the expansion that this represents. And I copy session samples here. And with that done, we are all set. We can now take this with us everywhere, and we don't have to deal with the finding it in the AUV3 menu. It's right there in banks. We can simply type in Sitala Midnight Sunset, and it's just right there, ready to go. And again, we hit keys, and we've got our other options right here to preview the file, and we can go 64 and preview them all. So yeah, this is a pretty cool little workflow hack that I find really useful for using inside of Beatmaker 3. Now, of course, you can do your own variation of something like this. And you can also say you don't use Beatmaker 3 because you've got the preview files here. If you go into SampleCrate and you got it on slide over mode, you always have the ability to preview. So yeah, you've always got the ability to preview right there in real time with no issue whatsoever. And so say you're using AUM or another app with Sitala, you go ahead and preview these, and then you can select which kit you want to go for. So it's a similar workflow in either case. I just find Beatmaker 3 is a little bit smoother and intuitive because you're able to do everything in app and have the ability to hold the pads for as long as you want the preview to go on before deciding which kit you're going to go with. But this is a really sweet hack, I think, for using Sitala inside of Beatmaker 3 and getting a predictable, you know, workflow going. So hopefully you found this Sitala Beatmaker 3 hack useful. If you did, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts, and what are some of the workflows that you've come up with using Sitala or any other app that has kind of made the difference in terms of your productivity. Let me know in the comment section down below, and be sure to join the Discord so that you can join the conversation with other iOS music makers as well. And with that being said, SidePadBeatmaking.com. Peace.